as an executive business coach, I regularly meet people, executives, who are really high achievers. And a pattern that you see with a lot of these people is that for a certain amount of time, they are very high performing. They really impress their bosses, they impress their colleagues, they even impress themselves. And then after having performed for a long amount of time, there is like a sort of saturation in their energy and they collapse or they have to withdraw. They have to do it much, much slower. They have to essentially draw back. They have to regenerate. Now that regeneration as such is not really an issue, but the pattern that is behind it is that most of these people, they really are compensating for something they have been missing in their early childhood. And what can this be? Well, some of these people, they didn't really feel the love that they wanted to feel as an early child. They felt rejection. Some of them even were shamed. And some of them even had the feeling that they didn't belong or that they really were not part of the group. And hence, in order to get that recognition that they never got in their early childhood, they're going above and beyond to make sure that now this time they will be recognized. And what you will see when you discover these kind of patterns is that this pattern repeats over and over again. So they have periods of high performance, then periods of withdrawing, and then after that they perform again. Until that certain moment comes where they really have to question themselves because the pattern no longer works. Now, why is this happening? Why is this really showing up in their lives like this? Well, it is very clear. In our early childhood, between the age of 0 to 7 years, you have a specific emotional imprint. And that imprint is your heart core. That imprint is essentially your operating system that has been laid down in your nervous system. And when that nervous system is sharing that load or is storing that load, that nervous system wants to essentially go back to zero. It wants to go back to the relaxation of itself. So what is your nervous system? What is your subconscious doing all the time? It is trying to recreate that early childhood imprint, that early childhood feeling of not belonging, that early childhood feeling of not being seen, that early childhood feeling of being shamed, and it is trying to resolve itself. It is trying to finally get rid of that early tension that was stored there. But what is beautiful is this, is that we don't really have a memory of these first 7 years, because these first 7 years, these pre-verbal years, they are sort of forgotten by the conscious memory that we have, because memory only starts to really build as of the age of 7 and beyond. So what is happening in our life is that we are constantly trying to compensate, trying to recreate that situation that we had in our early childhood in order to resolve it, in order to resolve that tension, in order to be finally seen, in order to be finally loved, in order to be finally not shamed. And as long as this early imprint, as long as this emotional load sits there in your nervous system, it will try over and over again to try to resolve itself. And that is why you will see that you will recreate in your life the same kind of situations. And it goes extremely deep. It is very interesting to see how the subconscious works. I'm going to give you one impressive example, but it's not an exclusive example because I've heard and seen so many examples similar to this. Now, I've met this person a few years ago, and this person is someone who's a real high achiever, a perfectionist. It's a person who does like a double job. Everyone is very happy with her because she works so hard, because she always shows up, because whenever something needs to be done, she will be loyal. She works overtime. If needed, she works in the weekend. She works 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the evening. She is there. You can count on her. But what she constantly finds out is that She has to perform a lot to get the recognition that she really wants. And it's a repeating pattern that she sees all over her life. Now, interesting enough, this person a few years ago has taken a break because, of course, as all high achievers do, they really suck up so much energy. They have to really perform so hard that they drain their own system, that now and then they need to reboot. So this person decided to really take some time for herself. And she took a few years off, going into a different direction and really exploring life in a different way. And then, of course, after a few years, you want to go back to normal business life. So she's applying for a job where she says, well, I don't want to work 100% anymore. I want to take more time for myself. So I've decided to go for an 80% job, meaning 4 days a week. So I still have a long weekend, and so I can always recover and enjoy my life the way I want to. So this person applies for this new job. Everything goes according to plan. And what happens, curiously enough, it is almost as if the subconscious has the capacity to look into the future, to be able to recreate that pattern. She finds herself in a new job. And within the first few weeks, half of her colleagues are being fired. Her boss is being fired. So in an 80% job now, she finds herself in a situation where she has to overperform again. She needs to do double jobs in order to really get on top of things. And the beauty of this is that she planned on doing 80% job, but now she has to do a 100% job and even do in the weekends, because otherwise she cannot compensate for the loss of her colleagues. So it is a very clever mechanism that this subconscious load is almost able to see into the future and to predict where it will be able to find a similar pattern it can match that wants to be resolved. So on the surface, it seemed like a beautiful opportunity to really go into a more relaxed state and to get a better work-life balance. But in reality, this work-life balance was completely distorted by suddenly half of these colleagues being fired. And this is not an example that is unique. This is not an exception. I see this all the time when I coach high achievers. It is as if this pattern is looking wherever it can, wherever it feels that it can be relived, that the situation can be recopied, that the pattern can be replayed. It's looking for those situations, those business environments, those partners where it will relive itself. Until finally, the charge or the imprint or the trauma or the pain that was originally stored in the early childhood is being resolved. And that's where the CorePrint comes in. My system allows to really detect what these patterns are, so you can take already preemptive measures and you can make sure that this pattern does not replay. Because as long as the subconscious pattern is not really resolved, you will keep replaying that same situation. And of course, that takes a lot of energy. And for some, it almost seems as if it is a loop they cannot escape. Because the original is that the load, the original imprint of the emotional load, it needs to resolve itself. It wants to go to zero. And in order to make sure it goes to zero, you need to map it and you need to find out what's behind it. And once you've mapped it, you can resolve it and solve it and escape the loop.